if you can join me for the discussion. Thank you for this personal movie, and I found it very touching, I would say. Before giving the word to the audience, I would ask you, why did you choose to give this story to the wide world?
It sort of came bit by bit. I heard about what happened to Addai, and it was a complete shock, first of all, of course, but then also my perspective on the whole subject changed completely, and I thought I want to tell his story because it's not only, his life is not only about the last few months of his life or what happened in Syria, but also what happened before and how did he even end up there and what happened and how did we not see this happening. So all these questions kind of urged me to sort of go deeper into the subject, and I did some research, and everything I saw or I found was very reduced to the facts, and there were no personal stories as such at the time, and I really wanted to know more. So I asked his mother if she wanted to, or if she was open to the idea, basically, and I think because she also had some bad experience with the press in general, and also she felt like she was put into a drawer directly as well when people heard about the story, if they didn't know her especially. I mean, she didn't really tell many people about it, but then again, it's really difficult to hide these things completely, especially in a small town. So she was very open about it and decided to make this film with me, even though she didn't really want to talk to anyone else anymore. And so I decided I have to kind of tell this story.
Thank you for it. If there are any questions from the audience, please raise your hand and I'll bring the mic. Before we get the question, I would ask you about the technique you used. I found it really powerful. Both images, but then sketches and also some sort of painting. Yeah. Is this your own way of telling stories, or it's something you use only for this particular film?
It's something this is the first time I've ever worked with animation, actually, and but from the beginning I had an animated documentary in mind, like when I first started to think about making a film. Somehow it had to be an animated film, even though I had no clue of how to work with this. And that's probably a good thing, because I might not have done it otherwise. So I started to look for references in films that I liked or other animated documentaries, and there aren't very many until now. I mean, there are some, and we all know Waltz with Bashir, and it's sort of being the most popular animated documentary. And I started talking to some animators and an animation studio who I worked with in the final film as well, and we just kind of started out with nothing, I guess. But before we even, as the story came along, or as the film came along, as a regular documentary, so to say, so interviews and documentary footage and shooting and archive and all of this. So we kind of kept trying out things that might work with the images and scenes, and we did a lot of storyboarding and sort of put these together, and we decided very early on to use rotoscoping as a technique, because it kind of keeps the reality to it as well, but also it's one of the not so time-consuming forms of animation in this case, and also we obviously had a limited budget, and so we kind of went from there. We just took it step by step, tried things out, and then eventually ended up having different layers of styles, because they obviously belong to different parts of the story, or they represent different things within the story, like the photographs, for example, that aren't completely animated, or the sort of found footage or archive footage, cell phone footage. So they sort of keep the connection to the reality, and the further away it got from what I could personally film, the more animated it is. That's sort of the concept.
I think it really helped to tell the story and to add all the pieces you couldn't film, actually. If there are any questions, dacă sunt întrebări, imediat.
First of all, really thank you for the movie. I haven't seen a lot of, documents or pieces of art in general, just focusing on the personal experience of the fighters rather than just vilifying them. So my question would be a bit unrelated, but do you know if there are any kind of like reintegration programs for those who have returned to Germany? The ones like Ilias and so on?
Unfortunately, not really. I mean, officially there are some programs and there are some organizations and people who can offer help, but it's not, like in reality, it doesn't work very well. I mean, they usually, a lot of them go to prison, first of all, and I mean, it really depends who they end up with, if they have a good social worker or somebody who really kind of tries to get them back into society and offers them the help. But it's not like, I know some countries have very good or organized reintegration schemes that work a lot better. I think Denmark is doing pretty well in this, but for example, but in Germany it's not really, I think people don't really like to admit that it's actually a problem for us, and that's where one of the biggest ones, of course.
Do you know the scale of this phenomenon in Germany? Of those that go to conflict areas and then return back?
Not quite, because that's also not very publicly discussed as today. I know it's a lot more than we think, and but I think also the problem is that not very many people publicly talk about it, especially families that this has happened to. I'm not sure what the numbers are right now, but I think it's also quite inaccessible to really know.
Some more questions from the audience, please.
Thanks. Thanks for the movie. It was amazing. I imagine there was some interview process with the characters, and I was wondering whether in these interviews there was something that you wished you had the chance to convey in the movie but somehow chose not to, or in general, how much of these interviews and their stories that is probably a lot more complex that was included, how much were you able to integrate? And
this is it's a good question. For the mother, she was so open with me because she knew me and before, and then we spent a lot of time talking, all aside from filming and stuff. So she at some point said to me, "You can have whatever you want from me, and I'll trust you." And on the one hand, this is obviously really great for any filmmaker who tries to make a film and get some interview and information. But on the other hand, it also obviously put all the responsibility on me to really make sure I get what I need to tell the story, but also I don't cross boundaries or I don't get tempted by certain things, and because it's so easy to accidentally cross over to this sort of thing where you think, oh, this is really great information, but really it doesn't really add to the story, and it's just something to talk about maybe. But so that was a very difficult balance, and I was really nervous to show her the film in the end, actually. But it was fine. I mean, she was fine with it. And with Ilias, actually, there was also some information that he asked me not to put into the film, but which really helped to get to know him and understand him. And I think also, I mean, for me, it was obvious that I wouldn't do this. If he says to me, I don't want you to actually put this in the film, then it was clear to me that I wouldn't do this. But I also don't think the story lost out on anything. I mean, obviously everything sort of helps to understand a person as such, but there was enough, I think, to kind of make clear why he chose to go this path. So, I mean, yeah, we had a lot of moments like this because we talked a lot, and there was a lot of information. And I mean, some things he didn't tell me, and he said before, I won't go there because this is sort of, if somebody asks you later, then maybe you have to go to court and actually talk about it as well or something. So it was sort of again finding the balance kind of. But I mean, obviously, it's really important to get the trust of your protagonists, and I don't want to be known as the person to abuse that, of course.
Did you see the film, Elias?
Yes. Yeah, he's no longer in prison now, actually, and he actually came to one of the screenings, and both of them, which I thought was very brave, saw the film for the first time at a public screening as well. So the mother kind of went incognito and saw the film, and then Elias as well came for the talk.
So he's not afraid to come in front of an audience?
Not
and
anymore. I mean, he
speak
was,
about his experience? And
no, not really. I mean, he doesn't do it all the time, but he's come to a screening here and there with the film. I don't think, other than that, he's not really up for talking so much about it. But yeah, I mean, he always was up for, like, in the beginning maybe not, but after a while he said, it's fine, you can film me or whatever you want, but we weren't allowed because the prison wouldn't let us, and also we went to the court and tried and stuff. There was no way. I mean, I could go in, and I went to see him a lot and wrote it all down, and also I sent him lots of letters, and he sent letters back answering my questions, and then I went in with the drawings and said, look, this look like it should be, and this is kind of how the process was with him, actually.
any more questions? If not, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And the film will be screened tomorrow again,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to recommend it to your friends, do so.
I'll be here as well.
Thank you once
Thank
again.
you very much.
Bye.